Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our first Odysseus webinar. So the topic today is circular economy and the impact of the European Green Deal. And I'm very happy to host today a quite interesting discussion on this really important and interesting field. And I'm very happy to have three experts here today, which will give some statements from different points of views and different angles. And of course, we'll discuss afterwards, and of course, based on your questions. My name is Christoph Griesbeck. I'm in Odysseus, the Innovation Hub Coordinator for Food, Biotechnology and Circular Economy. And I'm your host today for this afternoon, and I would like to facilitate the discussion today. So for those of you who are not familiar with Odysseus, I will just mention a few short details of Odysseus, and just to give you just an idea what Odysseus is. So Odysseus is an European alliance of universities consisting of 6 partners, and the 6 partners, as you can see on the map here, are Huber-Heim, University of Applied Sciences in Helsinki, Finland. It's the University of Seville in Spain, University Côte d'Azur and Nice in France, so University of Genoa in Italy, Technical University of Košice in Slovakia, and MCI here in Innsbruck. So this alliance consists of more than 160,000 students, 8,500 academic staff, and more than 1,000 research groups, and has been started in 2020. So Odysseus has this long-term plans and partnership for contributions for the development of the cities and the regions, and should enable an inclusive and engaged society for science, and should at the end consist of an attractive and competitive European university ecosystem. So one important aspect of Odysseus is the concept of our fields and focuses of strength. So we have decided to take 6 fields, and they are called innovation hubs. You can see these innovation hubs. Each university is in charge of one of these innovation hubs, but all universities can, of course, contribute to all these topics you can see here. So we have the innovation hub of aging and well-being located in Côte d'Azur. You can see the innovation hub energy, transport, mobility, smart cities located in Seville. You can see the innovation hub of tourism, arts and heritage in Genoa, artificial intelligence in Helsinki, in Huber-Heim, digitalization at TUKE, Technical University of Košice, Slovakia, and last but not least, MCI hosts the innovation hub of food, biotechnology and circular economy. And these innovation hubs have the goals to start some long-term partnerships with all the others in terms of student and staff exchange. We will try to develop study programs with double degree and joint degree options. We will have research projects which are common between different partners. And of course, we will have some public engagement, such as this webinar we have today. And this webinar today is hosted not only by this innovation hub of food, biotechnology and circular economy, but also by Compass. You can see here Compass in the logo, and for all of you who have thought about what does Compass mean, so Odysseus is, let's say, a kind of a journey for long term, so 10 years as the classical Ulysses you all know. And we don't want to have really just like an Odyssey, but of course, if you go for a sailing trip, you need as a very important tool, Compass. And this is what Compass is. So Compass is the work group within Odysseus, which is responsible to support the long-term goals, such as the research and innovation agenda. So the most important tool within Odysseus for our innovation and research goals is Compass. And so today this webinar is hosted by Compass and Innovation Hub of Food, Biotech and Circular Economy. So our topic today, now we are really at this point where we can start with our main topic today, is the European Green Deal. And for this European Green Deal, as you may have heard about, the most ambitious project within the European Union to be the first climate neutral continent in the world, to reduce the greenhouse emissions by 2050 to zero. And this has, of course, lots of impact in different fields and different parts. It should, let's say, decouple economic growth with resource use. And at the end, it has to be kind of a just transition. So no one should left behind. All the countries have to be involved in this project and in this process. And to make it more clearer to you, we have prepared a short video you can see now.
The European Green Deal is Europe's new growth strategy. We have to act now.
The European Commission has prepared 3 concrete actions that will offer a strong basis for the New Deal.
I want Europe to become the first climate neutral continent in the world by 2050.
Real benefits include zero pollution, affordable and secure energy, smarter transport, and high-quality food.
A Just Transition Fund will leverage public and private money, including with the help of the European Investment Bank.
All these will contribute to a global Green Deal. No one will be left behind.
We will deliver a sustainable Europe investment plan.
Our €1 trillion of investment would give investors confidence to make long-term decisions on environmentally responsible projects. This will mean new jobs, a cleaner environment, and a better quality of life for people.
We Europeans are ready.
So as you could see, this Green Deal is really a quite great and ambitious project and includes so many different aspects, from fresh air and clean water to energy efficient buildings and mobility, to safe and healthy food, to smarter transport and mobility systems, to clean energy. So you can see all these different topics have to be put in one just big project, and this is as Ursula von der Leyen called it, the Europeans' man on the moon moment. So this means this is quite ambitious project, and it has so many different aspects. We are very happy to have 3 experts here today, which will tell us about different angles and perspectives on this really ambitious project. So we have here today Karin Huber-Heim. She's the director of the Circular Economy Forum Austria. And so she is in contact with different companies and is in charge of the innovation exchange between institutions and companies in many different ways and as well countries. So we have Minna Mari Hamala here. She's in Mag.a in Helsinki, lecturer for corporate responsibility, and will have some academic input and some research input in this field. And as all this stuff is really on a legal basis, we need some legal experts. And so we have really the expert in this field for European Union law at MCI here in Innsbruck, and this is Markus Frischhut. So I will ask the experts now to give a short introduction about themselves, and they, after this introduction, we will have a short statement from all of the 3 experts, and then we will be happy to discuss and to find out what are the crucial points of the Green Deal. So Karin, I'm happy that you are here and will bring in your expertise today.
Thank you, Christoph. Thank you for the invitation to speak here. I'm happy to be part of this beautiful and impressive Ulysses initiative. And I'm also glad that I can introduce our initiative to develop a circular economy ecosystem here in Austria for circular innovation. We are a network of networks. We have many stakeholders that are already involved in our in circular economy in one way or the other with different expertises. Working with us. We are a member of the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, and we consist of, Christoph, could you click? Thank you. We have been founded out of the Talanfi Center for the Study of System Sciences. We're having a research group since 2016. Where we actually spent a lot of time researching, traveling, and analyzing how other countries start out in the circular economy in their countries. Who are the enablers? Who are the drivers? Who needs what? And what works best? With all this knowledge, we came back and we managed to bring on board Circular Futures, the policy advisory actually to create circular frameworks, logistic frameworks here in Austria that will foster circular economy. And RESPECT is the Austrian Business Council for Sustainable Development, where more than 300 companies who already are familiar with sustainability management and sustainability topics, and we made them familiar. We every year since 2017 we have already started to bring in circular topics into their awareness, so they are already on board and kind of aware. And Design Austria is a very important partner for us. It's the association for 1,400 designers in Austria, who work in process design, experience design, product design. So every kind of design thinking that we all experience one or the other way in our daily life is covered here. So these founding organizations represent 1,748 other companies within this network. And we also work with cooperation partners outside of Austria, because it's really important to collaborate and to cooperate, because many solutions we currently have only work in a small scale, and to scale them, we really need to go cross-border. We really need to go cross-industry, and this is basically what we're doing. We bring together stakeholders in several formats that we have created, from webinars, seminars, roundtables for experts. We have academies, we have cross-industry dialogues, and we also, I've just come back from a good practice, circular good practice in the building and construction industry in Brussels. So we also travel to our partners and see what is happening in their country, and we bring along companies. Next slide, please. So all these formats are open to everyone, to large organizations, small organizations, wherever they are currently at their levels. They find a resource library. And also a new project that we're currently working on is Circular Insider. It's going to be a magazine and will be issued next year, at the beginning of next year. Because it will show what is already existing, and because this is important, and this is something that we have received throughout many different stakeholder dialogues, that people would like to see what is already there and who is working on what, because there is research already happening, there are pilot projects happening, there are several companies who have already transformed either product loops or certain processes, and there is a lot going on. But if you always only see what you're doing yourself, this doesn't give you the full picture. And so Circular Insider is going to be one step on that way. And we really hope that we can also already include the Austrian national circular economy strategy in this. And we'll have someone from the ministry explain what the pathway for Austria into a circular economy will be. Next slide, please. And this actually is our baby. This is something that we are currently working on, or currently we've been working on this all the time, but it still has to grow. We are mapping everything that is going on in Austria already, from material banks to urban innovation projects that are related to circularity, to funding EU projects, service design. So all the elements that a circular innovation ecosystem could use, we are mapping them currently. It's a landscape right now, but our vision is within the next 5 to 10 years to really develop this into an ecosystem and bring the elements into relationship with each other and really bring them into cooperation loops, into collaborative innovation systems. So this is our vision for Austria, and definitely it has to go across borders. So yeah, this is what we are about, and this is what the project is about. And I'm happy that I had the chance to introduce this here to all of you. Thank you. Oh, right. I have another slide. I forgot about that. I should have. I was ready to bring. These are, you can all bring them up. These are actually companies that we have already mapped, or organizations or initiatives. From several industries. Refurb is electronics and now textile. Lenzing is textile and plastics or Kunststoffe in German. Chemical industry. EOS is a design office that is really very ahead of our times if it comes to circularity. Blün is an aquaponic agricultural bioeconomy project. We also have Baukarussell, which is about labor, creating labor. It's actually a social circular project in the building industry. We have Materialnomaden, which is a building and it's a material and design platform for deconstruction of materials and in the construction sector. And of course, then there is the topic of textiles. I don't need to go into that now, but we're using too much stuff. Textile industry is a big polluter, and therefore everything that can make us reuse and reduce our intakes is very much looked after. And then we have in Vienna we have a municipal project, city projects. The city of Vienna is very active in circularity and making Vienna a circular city, and also integrates energy topics, which is very important, that all the energy that we use in the circles are, of course, renewable energies. So yeah, these are, I'm very happy to answer some questions that may come up to any of the companies and why we have decided to point them out. There are some other examples on our websites, but I'm happy to answer questions why I present those as good circular practice. And now that's it from me.
Okay, thank you very much, Karin, for this introduction. And I would like to hand over now to Minna-Mari Haamala from Mag.a in Helsinki. And so she is a lecturer for corporate responsibility. And I'm happy to have you here today and to welcome you today. And the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Christoph and Karin. I come from Helsinki, from Huber-Heim, which is, as was mentioned in the beginning, we are a Ulysses partner. We are in University of Applied Sciences, which means that we also work closely with companies to develop their services and practices and to really drive corporate development projects. I personally am involved with sustainability topics in a broad sense, but also including and specifically also working with circular economy projects in which we mainly develop corporate practices, business models to incorporate circularity. So in some ways, doing something similar as was just presented. And in this very short introduction, so that we get to discuss the topics in more detail, I'll just point out two areas in which we as a partner, the University of Ulysses, are combining or what we are doing with respect to the circular economy. We can have a look at the next slide. This is maybe one area which I'm very passionate about is circular economy business models. As I've been working with business models quite a bit and with sustainability quite a bit, and I realized that often the innovation that is needed in terms of driving circular economy might be a shift in the business model. And maybe not so much something else. So business model innovation is sometimes a bit difficult to drive within a company, but it can be a very powerful tool. So we have a strong history of looking and researching business models and business model innovations, and now we've been doing it with the topic of really climate and circular business models. So we're looking at how to design business models so that they incorporate or take circular economy into account. What are the value drivers for customers? Some benchmark analysis, how you can measure and evaluate the success of circular economy business models. And then also we've been doing research on sharing economy and how sharing economy promotes circular economy as one specific type of business model. We also have a development hub at our university where we're looking at how we can help companies or how we can support companies in building climate and circular economy business models. Then on the next slide, we have some ideas on how artificial intelligence can enable or enhance circular economy implementation. We are running the Ulysses Artificial Intelligence Hub at our university, and we have a viewpoint that we could combine artificial intelligence to help circular economy successes or success stories. And it seems that especially in the area of design and the operation of circular business models, as well as in optimizing sort of circular infrastructure, we could make progress leaps through the use of artificial intelligence. And that is something that we would like to research further and would like to further work on as well. So that's basically what we're doing. On the next slide, there is just my introduction, but I think I already mentioned that I've been working with industry partners and I've been working at the university on circular economy and sustainability topics. And that's also my background for today, that I'm taking a partly research role in the discussion here, but also a strong developmental role once we get to discuss further in this webinar. But thanks, Christoph. I'll hand it back over to you so Marcus can get going with his introduction.
Thank you very much, Minna, for this introduction. And now, as you already mentioned, so I would like to hand over to our third expert here in our panel. So Markus Frischut is at MCI, chair and study coordinator for European law. And I'm very happy that he will share some insights on this European law in the context of the Green Deal. Thank you, Markus.
Thank you, Christoph, and thank you everyone else who was involved in the organization of this event. Thank you very much for the invitation to share some views As Karin and as Minamari, I'm looking at the same topic, but from a little bit a different angle. So my background is in law, European Union law, also European health law, where I want to emphasize that health is more than just focusing on humans, so also involving the environment, hence the topic at hand. And as Christoph mentioned, my work, so my teaching and research is also taking place within this Chaumonet chair, kindly supported by the European Union under Erasmus+. And so this chair, besides EU law and European health law, focuses on the philosophical perspective, the ethical perspective, and also the perspective of common values. And as you can see from some of the research that I'm doing, I'm looking at the relationship of EU law and ethics in general, but also when it comes to decision making, but also when it comes to the value of nature and also communicable diseases. So as the current pandemic has shown us, this One Health approach is very important, as it combines not only humans, but also the environment and animals. Again, as the current pandemic is showing. If anyone is interested in the activities of this chair, so here that's where you can find out more. Also, this book is available free of charge or open access, so to say. Next slide, please. So my perspective of looking at this topic is from the angle of the law of the European Union, which refers to the question who is in charge of making legislation, so the EU and or the member states. In my research, I've also looked at certain principles of the European Union, so the precautionary principle, also the question how ambitious policy making has to be, striving for a low, high, or even highest level of protection, here health protection. And obviously, besides the precautionary principle, also sustainability is a very important issue in that regard. Those are all ideas that you can trace back both in law, but also in philosophy. So as we know, the categorical imperative of Immanuel Kant, Hans Jonas has also coined the ecological imperative. And as I just mentioned, it would be not a true holistic view if we would forget the fact that, for example, if we look at human health, that we also need to take into account the environment and animals. And so for me as a lawyer, the Green Deal is a roadmap comprising various elements, so ideas for future legislative or also non-legislative ideas which cover a broad range of topics, also including this topic or our topic of circular economy. And while I think we have more time to go into those details later on, I would also like to point out to this Conference for the Future of Europe, which maybe the title is a little bit misleading because it's not an academic conference. Quite the opposite. It's a bottom-up approach taking currently place in order to further develop the European Union. And I think very important also the Green Deal, and another topic that Mina mentioned, digitalization, artificial intelligence. And so that's what we can then see in the discussion. Next slide, please. Sorry, that was the previous. Yeah, thanks. And maybe if you can click once more. So as I said, that I'm also focusing on the values of the European Union. The Eurobarometer surveys, which are also accompanying the Green Deal agenda, they have constantly asked about values of the European Union and personal values. And while I'm not going into the details concerning the values, how they have developed over time, I think it's quite remarkable that since the last survey from 2019, also respect for the planet has been added here as a feature. So you can take that as just one example how environmental protection, also via the Green Deal, plays an increasing role in the European Union. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Markus, for this first view on the legal environment and legal framework. And so we are now at the point where the discussion really can start. So we have the option to take questions. So everyone can type in some questions in the YouTube comments, and then we will take these questions and will really bring it up for discussions here. And so until we can receive the questions, I would like to have to ask the first question now. So from my point of view, this Green Deal project is really very, very ambitious, maybe as we heard before, the man on the moon moment. And so it takes many, many steps. So what do you think is the most important first step to get into the right track to be successful at the end? So which can be the stepwise process in developing this idea and the Green Deal goals into really legislation, decisions, and really results at the end?
If I may.
Yes, please.
So as I said, the Green Deal is a roadmap which comprises various elements. And so we have this action plan of March last year on the circular economy. So action plan document presented by the European Commission. And just this circular economy action plan, and action plan already indicates that it's not a legislative proposal, but like kind of within the framework of the Green Deal, combining a framework of other ideas. And so that refers to electronics and ICT, textiles, plastics, it was mentioned earlier, construction and buildings, packaging, batteries and vehicles, and the food industry or food sector. And so that will be a multitude of legislative proposals, so different bits and pieces, which together try to achieve this idea of circular economy, of avoiding waste and keeping the material, let's say, longer in the lifespan, so to say. So it's a bunch of various ideas and proposals which now step by step need to be implemented.
Yeah, if I may skip in, thank you, Markus. I see a lot of a big knowledge gap. Actually, we know the Green Deal, we know what it is and what it contains. And it should really not be kept as an academic or political discussion. And this is what I see currently. In my opinion, it should be going out to the people, and this is not happening right now. I don't see the political communication towards the people, towards the businesses. I see businesses very interested. This is what we can say. They are extremely interested in circular economy, and circular economy and digitization topics are the most trending right now in businesses. But there is a lot of many things are unknown, and this is there is a big knowledge gap before we even talk about the doing, because neither the strategic nor the operational consequences or the to-dos that are necessary to even get there are clear by any terms. And I'm completely with Mina that the circular business models have the biggest potential. And currently, I see a lot of companies researching on materials, and there are also a lot of funding, like Austrian state funding, but also European state funding. At some point, it goes into research and development for materials or for technical solutions. But if you cannot rethink the system, there is no way we're going to get regenerative or circular at all. So we really need to start there.
Yeah, and I'd also like to point out that you did mention how does the Green Deal develop into a legal framework. Well, I don't know anything about that, but very important about circular economy or sustainability topics is that the companies would know the legal framework that is going to be relatively stable and that they can see it in the long horizon. So whatever new initiatives there are, that they are communicated so that the companies are confident in investing in something because they can see that, okay, this is where this process is going. And because circular economy is such a topic where the different stakeholders and their interests are sort of woven together, you have to be very careful on how to promote circularity also in terms of legislative structures, so that you don't just get a problem displacement issue where you just move the problem, like a sustainability related problem, from one place to another, which in the past maybe with some environmental legislation did happen, that we just shift from one place to another, and that's not very useful. And then companies need to have this also, or it'd be good that also governmental institutions and governmental bodies, through, for example, their purchase practices or other policies, show that they actually do promote circularity, so that it's not just something that is being said, but something that actually you can showcase local examples of circularity that come about maybe from the local government purchases or such that promote sustainability and circularity. So I'd say that there needs to be a long-term perspective so that the companies can invest in the changing of their business models and structures.
I think that the topic of business models is very a crucial point of this complete story, because what do you think is maybe the disadvantage at the moment of let's say European companies in comparison to companies in other countries, or let's say countries in general, which are, let's say, less ambitious than the European Union? And how can we turn, let's say, this disadvantage of at the moment the low price of carbon dioxide, how can we turn this at the moment this disadvantage to an advantage in the future, to change the business models in order to have not this kind of disadvantages for Europe?
If I may take this up, Europe doesn't have a disadvantage, not at all. Europe is the front leader in circular economy in the world. No other continent, no other place, no other region currently is as far developed in circular economy as we currently are. So we really, I think it's rather more picking up this momentum, using this momentum for European businesses and society to develop, because as a business we have technologies, we have the money, we have the good and employable people here, well educated. We have a big advantage. We just need to direct it. I mean, it's not just, but we need to direct it into a more circular, from linear to a circular system. And as a society, I think we have to learn a lot, because for the past two generations, we trained people. We grew up as a throwaway society. Everything was thrown away. This is just normal. This is normal behavior. So I think on a societal level, this is also be a really, really big challenge, because it's not only going to be legislation, and it's not only going to be companies or businesses who have to transform. We also need the citizens. We also need the society, and in the end, the consumers who go from consuming to using, and who accept those business models that we need to see. So this really is a very, very comprehensive challenge for each and every one.
Yeah, I'd also question the disadvantage. So I'm maybe with Karin here, that I think we have an advantage. Of course, having said that, we have to realize that circular economy challenges and solutions are very different in different areas because of what the environment looks like and what the local infrastructure looks like. So whatever works here in Helsinki, where I'm at right now, might not work in Vienna, where you guys are, or Sevilla, or then we go further outside of Europe, so it might not work. So something that we need to maybe very, very mindful and cautious of is that when we develop something here, we have to understand that for that solution to be competitive, we have to understand how it needs to be localized, because maybe with some other products, let's say we're selling just as a shop, let's say we're selling cars, they might not be so different between different geographies. But if we're looking at circular economy solutions and the whole infrastructure, which is related to waste or collection or recycling or sourcing or raw materials manufacture, is very different. So we have to be able to be competitive with European developed circular economy solutions, we have to understand how and what needs to be adapted and what are the crucial issues for some solution to work, and how those can be implemented in a region with a totally different infrastructure or culture or raw materials setup or whatever the situation. So I think there's a huge potential. We just need to be mindful of how we adapt the solutions that maybe have worked for Europe, and how do we adapt them to other places to solve the problems globally.
I would like to support what Karin and also Minna mentioned. So what I very briefly sketched is a roadmap and a bunch of ideas, as I said, at European level. So that would be top down. But I think that, and that supports what Karin mentioned, needs to be supplemented in a bottom up way. And although if you summarize the Green Deal, it's a lot of drafts or proposals for amending various legal documents. So that would be top down. But irrespective of those plans, and even if companies do not know those plans, and I'm quite sure because it's a lot of information, I think every company knows how the company in its own field can make their production, their products, the processes more circular and more sustainable. And I think this combination of top down, and of course, once passed as legislative act, companies need to comply with that. But even anticipating and in a bottom up way, I think that's a very important way how you can make this idea of the Green Deal become or be realized on the long run.
I think this is a good point where this next question from the audience would really fit. So what do you think about to make all these initiatives inclusive? So what efforts have to be undertaken that these initiatives can be inclusive, as someone wrote or asked in the chat?
Well, one idea that you can find both here for the Green Deal and also referring to what Minna mentioned, so digitalization, artificial intelligence, in all those documents of the European Commission or other institutions, you always find this idea to leave no one behind. And I think that's very important. And for me, that I would name that as an answer to the question of how to make it inclusive, to leave no one behind, knowing that for some it might be a bigger challenge than for others. And so this cross-cutting idea that you can find in various fields of to leave no one behind, for me, that's the answer to the legitimate demand of making it inclusive.
So what do you think, what could be some really concrete efforts to not leaving someone behind? What do you think?
I've been working on some projects with the theme of inclusiveness, mainly in employment related projects. And as with circular economy solutions, there's many stakeholders involved. I think we need to co-create the solutions with those stakeholders to make sure, because I, as a person with my background, cannot fully understand another person with a very different background. I can only guess. So to have people from different backgrounds designing those solutions or testing the solutions would help them become more inclusive. also with other European sustainability legislation, we have the clause of do no significant harm, for example, with the taxonomy. So there's a topic or activity, and it must not cause significant harm to some other principles. So I think inclusiveness should be that similar kind of principle, that whatever solutions we develop, cannot leave anyone behind, or you cannot cause significant harm to other important principles, of which one should be inclusiveness, because it's in the basic structure of our legal frameworks, although our societies are still far from inclusive, I understand. But I think we should involve different backgrounds, people with different backgrounds, in designing the solutions that we need to deploy.
And do you think it's possible to take this inclusiveness in the frame of different countries? So you have, of course, quite diverse situations in different countries within the European Union, and maybe you need to adapt differently to this Green Deal. And this maybe can also mean inclusiveness. Do you think it's possible to have these different roadmaps, let's say, different speed within the same goal?
If I may pick it up, I think it is system immanent in a circular economy. If you think circular, it cannot stop on borders, because it doesn't make sense to close the loops only within the region or within the country. It may be possible for one or the other material, but if you need larger quantities of material that need to go back into the cycle, it doesn't economically, it doesn't make sense. And this is why I think this way of thinking circular really is a chance to collaborate and include those who you don't even have on the radar right now. And especially for businesses, they know about their suppliers. They know who supplies them with goods and who are their clients. But they need to see who else is there, who else is around for innovation. And this could be cross-sectoral. This could be someone they have never talked to before. And this is really necessary to stimulate this and also rethink material values. So not only who do we collaborate with, but what do we work with? So this really, I really see a big chance in widening our perspectives if we start to think circular, because otherwise we only close little loops here and there, and it will not do what the European Green Deal actually is aiming towards.
I think this leads me directly to the next question from the chat and from the forum. How can the waste industry adjust to the circularity of resources? Maybe this is, as you said, the circular economy, and we have, on the other hand, so far some waste and some industries based on waste. How can this be adapted? And how is it possible to adapt this or adjust the waste industry to this circularity?
I have to give an example from a waste management company here in Helsinki who has reprinted their trucks. That roughly translated, it says something like, I used to be a waste management handler, and now I am a raw materials specialist. So I think it's all about realizing what value you can create and what value you do bring to the customers, or what value you could bring to some other customers. So I think, and of course, to an extent, we will always need the waste management sector as well. And we are not, even though we have zero waste and zero carbon targets, we are not going to be living without waste in any foreseeable future. So we do need to have that sector, but I think that sector also needs to sort of rethink what it can do and how it can transform, and what are the competences that are in that sector to create value in another way than what they are doing now, and how can they move further downstream so that they are closer to, before the waste happens, and what can they do there, and what are the bottlenecks and value creators for the customers, and sort of start working from there.
Do you think we need some incentives or encouragement, or how can it happen that companies start to develop more sustainability and circular business models? So this next question from our discussion forum would lead to this direction. Do we need some encouragement, or how can we have incentives for companies to change in the direction of sustainability?
So in this action plan that I had mentioned earlier, sorry, the Commission also addresses the need not only to prevent waste, but also we need consumers on board so that they or citizens, that they know how to sort their waste. And the Commission has also mentioned that they would modernize EU waste laws. There will also be rules on the question of exporting waste to other countries. So again, you could say, so like we have in health law, this notion of health literacy. I think also we need a certain literacy of citizens, of consumers, but that will go hand in hand with mandatory requirements that will be binding law, so to say. So I think also here it takes a combined approach. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So one question in the forum is quite close to my heart, I would say. So I'm a biochemist and bioscientist by training, and the question here is within the video. It was talked about some growth, and so this was decoupling the economic growth from natural resources. And so this question says how we know that nature is based on steady state, so on circularity. And is there some kind of contradiction between this economic growth on the one hand and circularity? And this is what we learn from nature. So as I said, I'm working with microorganisms as a biochemist and microbiologist. And as I know, the growth of bacteria, sorry, in the lab, it's based on some growth phase. And after some certain growth, they start to get to a steady state, and then they start to die. So how can we have some permanent growth in economic dimensions decoupled from natural resources?
If I may pick this up, it is definitely a contradiction to have infinite growth on a planet with finite resources. This is definitely a thinking that comes from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, when everything looked very, very different. The problem is that we are still to this day applying economic theories from those days, and they do not match our reality any longer, because we have already crossed a couple of planetary boundaries already, and we do not know what happens if we cross them any further. Or, I mean, we do have expectations, but those do not look good. So in that sense, it is about time, and there are already economic models around how can we create regenerative growth that is modeled accordingly to natural systems, because this is exactly, nature is giving us everything, not only everything we have, but we should also restart or relearn or unlearn what we have come up with, because it was very detached from natural systems. And now I think it's the time where we have to look back, not only for new materials or new inventions that are coming out of nature-based materials, but really look into the systems that nature is based upon, and really learn from it, and come together again. And reunite our economics with the planetary gifts that we get actually from the natural systems.
I've introduced myself as a lawyer, and normally you should not talk about other disciplines, but I think here it's quite logic, I would say, and it's not really rocket science, that unlimited growth will not be possible, full stop. I think that's as clear as it is, and I have never ever met anyone, economist, whatever, who was able to convincingly explain me how that should really work. And maybe, Christoph, if you could go back to slide 16, then we can see this idea coined by Hans Jonas already in 1979, and that's a translation from German into English. Act so that the effects of your action are compatible with the permanence of real human life on Earth. And so this idea of the unlimited growth is, I would say, A, not logic, and B, it contradicts this idea of sustainability as coined here by Hans Jonas.
And I'd like to add to that as a society, I think we might to sort of might need to rethink what we consider growth and success and well-being, and whether those are whether we should somehow change that notion of how we measure economic growth, how we measure economic success, and what is considered to be a success. And there are some examples of where initiatives or projects have tried to look at growth and economic success indicators differently. But it does require a mindset shift. And also, when I introduced myself, I was saying that we look at business models, and that's sort of one of the big mindset shifts. For example, if we're saying that a company that is used to selling stuff, so that the company produces something that the consumer, for example, buys and uses for some time and tosses away and buys a new product. And now if we through legislation or through some other initiatives, the company takes ownership of that product and leases the service out, for example, which is a very, very sort of general example, then the company needs to rethink of how they get the revenue and how they measure their own success as a company. It can't be anymore how many products we sold. It must be some other way of measuring success. And I think the way that we've measured economic growth and economic success has been like this since forever. So you can pick up whatever economic textbook from whatever century and it will tell you the same thing. So maybe everything else in the world is changing. Maybe we need to also be brave enough to think that is there something there in our measurement that we should change, because I think it's attributed to Peter Drucker that you get exactly what you measure and you manage what you measure. And if your measurements are off, then your practices are also going to be off.
So the next question from our comment section of YouTube goes in the same direction. I would say it's about working with companies which are already on the way from linear to circular business models. And you work with some companies going this way. What are your key learnings from working with these companies in adapting their business models from linear to circularity? And can we maybe conclude from these learnings some let's say, incentives or encouragement for some more companies and for the future?
Would you like to pick this up immediately, Mina, or should I go in front of you? Because I'm sure you have some experiences too.
Go ahead.
Okay, so let me share mine briefly. First of all, I have to say it is really, really a challenge and very difficult to behave or think or do circular in an uncircular, unregenerative system. And currently the system is not circular. So for one company, it's really hard to close that circle. It really needs a system change, and it really needs more than one actor. And I think we've had this before. It really needs actors from all sides to move into the same direction. That's the first thing. And the second thing that I can see, or that I see happening, is it needs visionaries to start this. It really needs vision. Because if you start calculating now at the point where we are right now, it is not going to be the cheapest, not going to be the less expensive, the most economical model that you will have on the market. So you really, as a leader, if you take this decision, you really need to be visionary, and you really need to be aware that you are ahead of time, and and depending on the scale of your transition, it will also take some time. So it's better to start now, because if you want to be among the circular leading companies within the next 5 years, you should start now, because if you stop in 5 years, then there will be others that have already gone that path, because it takes time. And this is what I can see happening. So yeah, time, vision, and the system, I think, are elements that are really important.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, and also say that this idea of cooperation versus competition versus collaboration needs to somehow be different. We are, or companies are maybe a little bit reluctant to explore the idea of working together with their, what they consider their competitors, although there would be a lot of room there to develop maybe circular solutions together. And in some cases, I have seen both sides. I was part of a project where the buyer wanted to buy a very big systemic solution for a circular economy problem related to waste management, and they wanted a systemic solution that they would buy from just one operator, let's say. But then the companies that would be part of providing that systemic solution were not yet ready to make a joint offer or to make a joint proposal. So ended up that nobody got the sale or got the case. And especially when we're moving towards circular economy solutions, we need to be able to somehow think differently about collaboration versus competition, which is very tough. But there's always room for finding solutions that build on each other, even if the companies in some senses can be competitors, but there's also some senses for sure where they can be seen as collaborators. Again, a little bit of a mindset shift.
So what do you think is the role of universities or platforms like the Circular Economy Forum Austria for spreading the word and spreading the knowledge about circularity, circular economy? So as we had this inclusiveness topic before, and there's another question in this direction, how can we speak to the majority of the people who are not really, let's say, informed about these initiatives and about this idea? So do you think we have a special role as universities and we as Circular Economy Forums and as institutions? So what is your feeling of our responsibility and our role?
I do think that we actually have this responsibility of spreading the word and informing students. Although I have to say that very often it's especially the young generation who has a higher awareness in this field. And so it's very often students bringing in those ideas. And then as a lecturer, you can support that by pointing them to information that already exists, and I think that's a task not only of universities, but like in Mina's case or mine, but also in case of Karin. So other stakeholders, in addition to the European Union, which also disseminates a lot of information in that field. But of course, that's a combined task that cannot be done by one institution or one sector only.
And I'd also like to add, we recently had an event here where we were talking about circular fashion or circularity in fashion and textiles. Probably Karin knows more about this, but I think in a sense, not all of the consumers necessarily need to be aware or need to know to look for circular solutions. The sort of optimal world would be that whatever solution that the consumer goes looking for would have an element of circularity in that. So they don't have to be aware and sensitive to sustainability topics, but whichever choice that they make in the store would already have an element of circularity. Maybe it's to do with the raw materials, maybe it's the business model, maybe it's renting over buying, maybe it's something to do with the disposal of the product. So the consumer wouldn't have to bear that burden because they would already know that the companies have done what they need to do. And I, as a consumer, don't need to know about everything and be very, very sort of intimidated by that information. And I can just share a very short example that I was shopping for some necessary clothes and shoes for my kids because they grew out of the old ones. And it was really difficult because they're very sustainability minded, and they didn't find anything in the stores. We found some shoe, and then they Googled online, and then they said, no, this is not good because this company did this and this and this thing. And then we went to the next store, and still nothing there. So ideally, a consumer wouldn't need to do this. They would just be confident that, okay, if I go here, I know that the companies have done their share, and I can sort of, with a good conscience, I can buy whatever shoe that fits my foot. So yeah, I'd also like to believe in the fact that companies, when they are incentivized, they will sort of adopt the circular economy principles, and the consumers don't need to be so worried about the choices that they make, because they would all be okay in the circular economy sense.
Absolutely, can only agree to what Markus and Minna, you both said. I also really think that we overfright the consumer with this taking those choices. It's really hard to find information sometimes, like fact-based information. It's asked too much if you want to make your choices. And I mean, I think it's amazing that your kids Google where those things come from. But we cannot ask every consumer to do this. And honestly, we also haven't asked them when we created a linear system. We haven't asked them where you have to decide, is this going to be produced in whatever Bangladesh, Cambodia, or China? We never did. So companies really need to provide reliable products that we can trust and that we can see, and they have to provide solutions that match our needs, and not maybe less our wants. And this is part of the system change that we need to see, because currently a lot of marketing and advertising is based on creating wants. It's not filling our needs, because especially here, I mean, we're talking Europe here. We're not talking other parts, and also it doesn't apply for each and everyone in Europe. But basically, for many people, and especially for those who consume a lot, their needs are fulfilled. This is why they can over-consume. So, because also we had the inclusion question before. This is very often in this discussion, I see this happening, that yes, but everyone has the right to do this, and everyone has the right, whatever, to travel and to buy clothes. And yes, that's true. But the problem is not consumption, as it said, it's over-consumption. This is the problem. Many of us consume too much and too short, and then we don't use it, throw it away. And this is the problem. So it's not each and everyone's topic, but many people's topic. And the other issue with the educational topic, I think the younger generations are very much aware already, because of the media coverage, of the transparency that they live in the digital, as digital natives. But on the other hand, we also need to bring the generations that are not those young generations, but they are still in the seats of taking decisions, important decisions for the future of the younger generations, and we need to bring those along as well. And this really needs. Yes, it needs education. It needs constant information. It needs constant looking into things closely and going beyond just the measure of profits, financial profits, or technical benefits. Or we really need to extend our perspective. And this is something each and everyone can learn. And I think this is what we have to learn.
In the field of artificial intelligence, we have this concept of ethical by default, and I think here we need an approach of sustainable by default, so that it's like the normal situation, and then if you opt for something else, it should be like more, should cost more, also taking into account the other costs which are actually involved, but which are not always visible.
this is a very
absolutely, and not only sorry to jump onto this, Christoph. Not only cost more, it should be harder to get. It should be more difficult. So if we could just turn this around to have the opt out for the unsustainable issues, and the opt in is the sustainable part. This would solve so many issues for so many people, because if you're tired and you're overworked and you have 3 kids in your hand, like I do sometimes, this is really something you don't want to decide each and every minute of the day. So please, let's make our lives easier with sustainable decisions, making them easier for us. And it's not always a matter of money.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, it's a matter of a price we have to pay. So it's really for many people a matter of being informed and taking decisions. And as you already mentioned, to opting out the non-circular, the linear stuff, would make it easier for decisions for all the people. So in this context, one question I would like to add here would be that the circularity we discussed so far is usually in the way of future, let's say, business models and future products and so on. But of course, there is some large damage for environmental and natural resources already there. And so isn't it necessary, is there one question, that we aim also to complete restoration of nature? So we have, of course, not only to look into the future, but to include also the things that already have happened and have to be repaired more or less. And this should be one additional, let's say, aspect of circular economy, or let's say the Green Deal. What's your opinion about this?
Yes, so one idea that you can also find in this document action plan on the circular economy that I have mentioned earlier is also the right to repair. And there are examples, for example, also here in Innsbruck, of companies who have a repair cafe. And so I think that's not the only way how to implement this idea, but it's one idea also, a right to have stuff repaired. But I think that, to come back to the question, one issue, but in addition to what was implied in this question, so that we also need to restore nature. So I think I would see those as 2 elements going into a similar direction.
And a circular economy, from our point of view, is always a regenerative economy. It has always this regenerative aspect, and definitely the best energy to use is the one we don't use. So we don't need to talk about what kind of renewable energies we need. Please don't use as much energy as we are currently doing. And the same goes for materials. So whatever we already have in the cycle right now is to be used as long as possible. It should be reused as long as possible. It should be repaired. It should be recovered. It should be remanufactured, refurbished. And the very, very last cycle, because it takes a lot of energy or even chemicals, is recycling, whether it's chemical or mechanical recycling. This is currently the narrative. Circular economy is recycling. And that is actually the last choice for any material that should be taken. And before that, there are many other things that we should and need to consider. Because once we do that, there is not much, there won't be the room for new virgin materials and products coming in will be tighter, will be smaller. And so whatever we can keep using, this is really what we need to look into. And let me say something to restoration. Also with trees, I have to say, I'm so unhappy about so many projects, company projects that go for tree planting. Please, people, don't plant trees. Keep the ones we have. We need to keep the trees. Don't stop deforesting. Stop cutting them down. This is the first choice, and only then when we cut them down and then we restore. But please preserve before we even talk about restoring or reforesting or whatever it is. So keeping what we have is really the imperative right now.
I'd also like to jump in and add that I think our economic systems are not very good currently at looking at the value of these ecosystem services that we are provided. And one example is that the sort of issue of biodiversity is still maybe a little bit overlooked in projects that even relate to good causes like circular economy. I was just talking to an expert last week on a project that promotes renewable energy, or is a renewable energy building project, but might have some negative issues on biodiversity. And then it's sort of the consensus seemed to be that it's more important to get the renewable energy created and transferred than to look at the biodiversity issues that had to do with the power lines and the construction and so forth. What I'm trying to say that there might be conflicts between the different interests, and we might not be very good at looking at them. And I think biodiversity is something that we don't know enough about to be able to destroy it. I mean, if we destroy it now, we're never going to get it back. And we don't exactly know all the sort of services that biodiversity and nature is giving that have an economic value. It's just that we don't know what that value is, and nobody sort of said it to us in plain terms. So we have to be very careful of the sort of different impacts a project is going to have. Just because we don't know the value of something, it does not mean that it doesn't have a value. So that the value of ecosystem services is huge, but just we didn't calculate it. So we can't just leave it out because we don't know the number. I'm just trying to, I think I was a little bit, went on a tangent there, but just saying that even if we don't know the exact value of something, we need to sort of figure it in the decisions and make sure that whatever we do in circularity doesn't have an adverse impact on something else, like, let's say, biodiversity.
And I think we're currently doing first steps into exactly that, Minna. The Partha Dasgupta report for the for the British government for the economics of biodiversity. I think this is a really important first step, because we need to put the real price on resources, on material, and currently we don't, because we externalize costs to whoever, society, environment, but no one pays for it. And I think this is to put a capital perspective on environment, on human capital, on intellectual capital, to put this is a capital, and these are capitals that need to be cared for, and they need to be kept to regenerate. So that we do not live off the capital, but from the interest rates, which is perfectly normal in finance, but it's not normal with so many other capitals that we currently source from. And this is rethinking the way we put value, we create value.
Well, thank you so far. So I'm very happy that I can see that the discussion and the questions in the comment section is quite ongoing and quite intensive. For time reasons, we just have one last question with just a quite brief final statement within 5 minutes altogether. So we have to close our session within a few minutes, but maybe just one final important question could be: what do you personally think is our Western European living standard compatible with a just and global circular economy? What do you think, just in brief, to finalize our discussion here?
Okay, so let me start. I think currently it's not compatible. Absolutely not. We're using by far more planets than we have, but I'm very, very positive that it can be if we apply the lever that we currently have. And the best lever for that right now is circular economy, to apply circular thinking, regenerative thinking to whatever we do and whatever we use. This, I think, is at this point in time the best way to keep a good life also for us, and keep material or resource use at a minimum.
Thank you.
I agree. And if I've mentioned exporting waste, so let's say the global dimension before, I think also here we need to take the global dimension, that what we are using and we perceive it as our advantage is very often goes to the disadvantage of people elsewhere in the world. So yes, I agree with Karin.
I'd like to say that, of course, I agree to an extent. We all have the Earth Overshoot Day, but as I said before, we have to rethink what the quality of life means and what that includes and how we interpret that. And the solutions are going to be different. For, in a sense, me living in a cold country with a cold climate versus somebody living in a different climate, slightly warmer and slightly more sun. In a way, I'm always going to be needing more resources because I need to heat my house and I need to build it with more insulation. I need to wear more clothes. So it's not ever going to be like globally we all do the same thing and we consume the same amount of resources. So there will be some differences to what constitutes a reasonable living in those different areas. And I'm not saying I'm entitled to a bigger footprint, no, but it's just that because I'm living here, I need to insulate myself in my house. But we can think very differently about how those goods and services are produced, which I use, and how we live and how we organize our consumption system. So we do need to radically rethink to go towards that one globe that we actually have, instead of for example, me using 2.5 globes for my footprint. So we need to change the consumption patterns and the production systems that are behind those consumption patterns, because it's not sustainable.
Perfect. Thank you very much for these final statements. And of course, again, thank you very much for being here and sharing your knowledge and your experience with us. It was quite an impressive and interesting discussion. And I think it was quite useful and interesting for all of our audience. And we could learn really a lot about this Green Deal and of all these implications. So thank you very much, Karin. Thank you very much, Mina, Mari. Thank you very much, Markus, for being here and discussing and answering the questions from the audience and discussing. So it was such a nice event and such a nice experience today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christoph. It was really great, Markus and Mina, to have this discussion with you. And thank you, Christoph, for guiding us through and being in time.
Thank you, Christoph, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Karin and Mina.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure meeting you and also talking with you. And unfortunately, we did not see the audience today, but I do hope all of the online audience also enjoyed yourselves. And you can get back to us later if there's some specific questions that you had in mind that were not answered.
So I hope you will all be still in contact with us in future. So you can contact us via email. So you can see my email address as an Innovation Hub coordinator. You can see the address of Constanze Kaufmann, who is the Compass project manager in Ulysses. And you can see Andreas Walter here. He's the Innovation Hub officer for our Innovation Hub. And so please contact us, stay in contact. And we hope to be in projects and in discussions in the future again. So you can get in touch with Ulysses. You can see this QR code. And so this leads you to our Ulysses website. And so stay informed, stay in touch with Ulysses and Compass. And so I hope this will be a nice starting point for our discussions and future events. So thank you all for being here today. and for being part of Ulyseus and part of our webinar. So this was the first webinar of Ulyseus, of the Innovation Hubs and of Compass. And so I'm quite confident then we will have such webinars in a quite vast number in the future in different fields. And so today I would like to thank all of the colleagues who contributed to making this possible, to Andreas, Constanze, to Elena, and all the others of Ulyseus who made it possible to be here together in this first seminar. And thank you all for joining us today, and all the best. Bye.